ओम ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं
नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं
नरं चैव नरोत्तमं
नरं
नरं
चैव
चैव
नरोत्तमं
नरोत्तमं
देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं
देवीं
देवीं सरस्वतीं
सरस्वतीं
व्यासं
ततो जयमुदीरयेत्।
ततो
ततो जयमुदीरयेत्।
जयमुदीरयेत्।
नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु
नष्टप्रायेषु
नष्टप्रायेषु
अभद्रेषु
अभद्रेषु
नित्यं भागवत सेवया
नित्यं
नित्यं
भागवत
भागवत
सेवया
सेवया
भगवती उत्तम श्लोके
भगवती
भगवती
उत्तमश्लोके
उत्तमश्लोके
भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी.
भक्तिर्भवति
भक्तिर्भवति
नैष्टिकी।
नैष्टिकी।
Reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 12, title Devotional Service, and the verse number is verse number 10. Abhyase api asamarthosi
अभ्यासे
भाष्ये
अप्य
अप्य
असमर्थोऽसि
समर्थासि
matkarma paramo bhava
मत्कर्म
मत्कर्मा
परमो भव।
परमो भव।
mat artham api karmani
मदर्थम्
मदर्थम् अपि
अपि
कर्माणि
कर्माणि
kurvan siddhim avapyasi.
कुर्वन्
कुर्वन्
सिद्धिम्
सिद्धिम्
अवाप्स्यसि।
अवाप्स्यसि।
Abhyase api asmarthosi
अभ्यासे
अभ्यासे
अपि
अप्य असमर्थासि।
असमर्थोऽसि।
matkarma paramo bhava
मत्कर्मा
मत्कर्म
परमो भव।
परमो भव।
mat artham api karmani
मदर्थम्
मदर्थम्
अपि
अपि
कर्माणि
कर्माणि
kurvam siddhim avapsyasi.
कुर्वन्
कुर्वन्
सिद्धिम्
सिद्धिम्
अवाप्स्यसि।
अवाप्स्यसि।
Any Prabhuji's?
अभ्यासे अप्य असमर्थासि।
अभ्यासे
Abhyase
अपि
api
असमर्थोऽसि।
asamarthosi
मत्कर्म परमो भव।
मत्कर्मा
karma
परमो भव।
paramo bhava
मदर्थम् अपि कर्माणि
मदर्थम् अपि
artham api
कर्माणि
karmani
कुर्वन् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यसि।
कुर्वन् सिद्धिम्
siddhim
अवाप्स्यसि।
avapyasi.
अभ्यासे अप्य असमर्थोऽसि।
अभ्यासे अप्य
Abhyase api
असमर्थासि।
asamarthosi
मत्कर्म परमो भव।
मत्कर्म परमो
matkarma
भव।
paramo bhava
मदर्थम् अपि कर्माणि
मदर्थम् अपि
matartham api
कर्माणि
karmani
कुर्वान् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यसि।
कुर्वन्
kurvan
सिद्धिम्
siddhim
अवाप्स्यसि।
avapyasi. Thank you, everyone. Word by word meaning. Abhyase in practice.
अभ्यासे
अभ्यासे in practice.
in practice.
Api even if.
Even if
Api even if.
Asamartho unable.
असमर्थो
Asamartha
unable.
unable.
Asi you are.
Asi
असि
you are.
you are.
Matkarma my work.
मत्कर्म
Matkarma my work.
Paramo dedicated to.
परमा
Paramaha
dedicated
dedicated
to.
to.
Bhava become.
Bhava
भव
become.
become.
Matartham for my sake.
Matartham
मदर्थम
for my sake.
कर्मणि।
Api even.
अपि
Api
even
even.
Karmani work.
Karmani work.
work.
Kurvan performing.
Kurvan
कुर्वन्
performing.
performing.
Siddhim perfection.
सिद्धिं
Siddhim perfection.
Abhapsyasi you will achieve.
अवाप्स्यसि।
Avapsyasi you will achieve.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If you cannot practice the regulations
If you cannot practice the regulations
of Bhakti Yoga,
of
of
Bhakti
Bhakti
Yoga,
Yoga,
then just try to work for me.
then
then
just
just
try
try
to
to
work
work for
for
me.
me.
Because by working for me,
Because
Because by working for
me,
me,
you will come to the perfect stage.
you will
you will
come
come
to
to the perfect stage.
Any Prabhujis would like to read the purport, this page?
One who is not able even to practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectional stage by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, he can try to help such work. Even every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for the sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness, or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a high test of love of God, whereupon one becomes perfect.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Let's all chant together. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhuta Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swakatanti Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamsha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sakana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Shagana Lalita Shri Adhikam Shri He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinavandu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shavanuste Devi Pranamami Hari Hari Vanchakalpataruvascha Kripa Sindhu Vaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama
Rama
Ram
Hare
Rama Hare Hare Nilachal
Hare
Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Balabhadra Subhadra
Prasodravayam Jagannathaya
Jagannathaya Dino. So thank you so much for joining the Sangha. Last Saturday we couldn't because of the Philadelphia Rath Yatra. We couldn't meet. So we are trying to revive from where we left off. In the 9th verse, Krishna talks about the practice. But the way Krishna is going about describing the process is very profound. In 8th verse, which is 2 verses from today, we discussed about Krishna explaining that you fix your mind, where we spoke about how to mind the mind, and Krishna goes on to say, at the end in the 18th chapter and also in another verse, how to fix the mind, where mind is the main driver of our consciousness. And subsequently in the 9th verse, after the 8th verse, where Krishna talks about focusing on mind, Krishna goes on to say in the 9th verse that if you can't fix the mind, then you have to do regulative principles. You have to do sadhana bhakti. You have to do some practice, because a practice makes a man perfect. And in that practice, we spoke about how different people practice the game of cricket. So we took the slide last time where we had, how people practice, how a bowler bowls to just one stump so that he can, sharpen his practice capability, which is the practicing is staying regulated and chanting the holy name. So, and that is Krishna talks about as the second step after mind. Then in this verse, which is the 10th verse, Krishna is saying, if you can't fix the mind, which is the 8th verse, then you do sadhana bhakti, which is the 9th verse. And if you can't do sadhana bhakti, Krishna is saying, work for me, which is this word. So today we're going to discuss about why Krishna is saying, work for me. Because Krishna, so let's try to dissect this verse a little bit. Abhyase api asamarthosi. Abhyase means if you cannot practice. Abhyas means practice. Asamartho means if you're not capable of, you're not able to. Then Krishna is saying, mat karmo paramo bhava. Then if you cannot do systematic regulating life, regulation is all about upholding the four pillars of dharma. And these four pillars of dharma is mapped to each regulative principles. The regulative principles of meat eating relates to, compassion or cruelty, ability to have regulated um, uh, conjugal life, and not to involve in illicit conjugal life, has to do with cleanliness. And then the gambling, and not to involve in gambling, had to do with austerity. And then the fourth one is uh, is is no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no, what is the last one? Anybody remembers?
Intoxication, no intoxication.
No intoxication. Thank you, Prabhu. And the no intoxication has to do with um, with with staying focused, staying controlled, and staying within the realms of a regulated life. So each of these four regulations, which every initiated devotee in
Truthfulness,
various,
basically, Prabhuji. The fourth is the
yes,
truthfulness.
fourth one is truthfulness. Fourth one is truthfulness, because when you are basically indulging in intoxication, you are basically becoming very untruthful to the core, and that is where, thank you, Prabhu, where it is mapped to truthfulness. So the truthfulness, compassion, uh, cleanliness, and
Austerity.
cleanliness and austerity are mapped to the four application of the regulation, which we just went through. Uh, so so Krishna is saying, if and staying with the confines of being regulation, you have to do chanting of the holy name. And this chanting of the holy name is something which will cleanse your heart, and you'll come back to Krishna. So Krishna is saying, if you can't do that, if you can't do the regulation, if you are asamartho, if you cannot do this practice, which Srila Prabhupada has so nicely laid out in our parampara, and is one of the objective of our Krishna consciousness regulated lifestyle, then Krishna is saying, work for me. So what does work for me means actually? So wherever Krishna's activities are happening, then there is need for various different, buildings, different cleaning activity, different organizational activity, ability to distribute Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness is all about sharing, and it amplifies the outcome when we share. Therefore, Krishna is saying, if you cannot do practice on a regular basis, the regulative principles which we spoke about, which kind of maps to the four pillars of dharma, because wherever there is no compassion, there is no dharma. Wherever there is no cleanliness, there is no dharma. When there is no truthfulness, there is no dharma. Whenever there is no austerity, there is no dharma. Likewise, wherever there is gambling, meat eating, intoxication, and illicit sex, which actually maps to each of them, then there is no dharma. So in order to further our uh, process of getting the dharma right in our lives, in our societies, we have to stay regulated, exactly like how we travel in the left side of the road when you are in India, and right side of the road when you are in US, staying regulated. Likewise, Krishna is saying, if you can't do that, then you have to work for me. So when you work for yourself, you are essentially buying a car, or you're buying a house, you're buying a TV. It's purely for your sense gratification. And Srila Prabhupada is saying, the only difference is that in the materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. So whenever you work by donating or giving charity or cleaning the temple or distributing books, where you are not, you need not be regulated in those situations. If you're regulated, is better. But if you're not regulated, it's still okay, but you're working for Krishna. There are many devotees who have not taken initiation, but have amply contributed to Krishna consciousness movement. And they are equally responsible for the growth of Krishna conscious movement than someone else. So we should not think that just because we are not regulated, we cannot aid in Krishna consciousness. You can still work for Krishna, and Krishna is giving a step-by-step process. So sometimes what happens, and that working for Krishna has to be developed over a period of time. You can't on day one work for Krishna. You need to have the right mindset to work for Krishna. For example, whenever you hear different poets and different lyricists talk about choti choti khushiyan or small happiness, they talk about small happiness because they have not read the scriptures, where you need to understand the higher principles of happiness, the higher taste. So that's the reason why they try to sugarcoat the less happiness and trying to find less happiness and then being satisfied. So Krishna consciousness is not trying to find a small happiness. Krishna consciousness is trying to find the purpose of life as to who we are, who we came from, and what is the relationship. And that is recognition of that is, and working on that is actually a higher taste. So when the higher taste is recognized, all the small things, what we hear, what is so nicely sugar coated by various different lyricists, will not happen. And that's the reason why whenever a person, in spite of his or her inability, works for Krishna, then that entire piece of work gets spiritualized, but Krishnized, and which is so different from getting a car for yourself or seeing a TV. And there are many examples actually, as you can see, this person is going on a truck distributing Bhagavad Gita. This distribution of Bhagavad Gita is actually a process where you're sharing the concept, what was laid down by Krishna. So here, as you can see in the first picture, the person is sharing Krishna consciousness by spending some time telling them the beauty of this creation and where we came from and who created this entire cosmic manifestation and what is our activity in fostering that relationship. And that is nothing but sharing Krishna. And sharing Krishna is working for Krishna. This is just an example. And the other example is to contribute towards Krishna consciousness. The contribution to Krishna consciousness has to do with either doing monthly EFT donations to the temple, or contributing during festivals, or contributing during different activities. So when you're doing that, that amount of Lakshmi is spiritualized and you get the benefit, which is essentially the third option Krishna is laying out, that work for Krishna. And that satisfies what is described in this verse. The other example of working for Krishna, as you can see, Ramji is holding a squirrel, and Ram Setu is taking place. Ram Setu construction is taking place, and the squirrel, by trying to sort of soak his back and dumping those little sand onto the bridge as it is getting created, he is working for Krishna. He's working for a spiritual cause, and that spiritual cause is recognized by Ramji in a very potent way. So in this case, this squirrel is working for Krishna. He's not regulated, but he's working for Krishna by being part and parcel of the yatra by helping out in whatever little way the squirrel is possible. And in Krishna's mind, in Ramji's mind, there's no work which is big or small. And look how he was recognized by Ramji. And another example we can talk about where working for Krishna is recognized beautifully. And there are many such examples. I can go on and on. But, there was a girl whose name was Dukhi in Gaur Leela, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Abhishek was about to take place, and Nityanand Prabhu and Advaita Acharya are working on getting pots. And this Dukhi was actually a maid servant in Srivas' house. And when these pots arrived from um, uh, pond with cool water inside, they used to put this water, earthly pots, and the earthly pots would break if it is not organized properly. So Dukhi in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela 500 years ago used to just organize the pots so that when Nityanand Prabhu and Advaita Acharya is going to take the pot to Abhishek Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the pots won't break. It will facilitate in the process of Abhishek of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When this was recognized by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, they were very pleased by this small activity of working for Krishna, because in front of Krishna, there's nothing which is big or small. And then they're so pleased with Dukhi's endeavor that they name Dukhi from that day to be Sukhi, who was the maid servant in Srivas' house. So no work in Krishna consciousness is big or small. And as long as we do little work in the form of cleaning the temple, as we know, just before Rath Yatra, we do the Gundicha Marjan, where we clean the temple. What is cleaning the temple? Cleaning the temple is working for Krishna, which is what 12.10 we're discussing today is all about. So as long as we work for Krishna, because our default setting is Jiber Shorup Hai Krishna Nityadas. That means our default setting is we are the servant of Krishna, but because of the material nature, because of the Maya, we have been diverted and we don't recognize that we are the servant of the Krishna, and we become the servant of Maya. And in this context, as long as we work for Krishna, if we can't become regulated, or if we can't mind our mind in Krishna consciousness as a third option, working for Krishna is always recommended. And that goes a long way in fostering our relationship. So when you start working for something, you transform to love, because sometimes as you drop your son or daughter to school, regularly, when you start dropping them, after a period of time, you garner that sense of happiness or the sense of appreciation and the sense of love for the subject in this matter, your kid or whoever. And likewise, if you work for Krishna, you'll generate love for Krishna in due course. And when you generate love for Krishna in due course, a time will come, you want to take the bold step of doing sadhana bhakti or finding a spiritual master and doing the 4 regulative principles we spoke about, which maps to the 4 pillars of dharma. And when you end up doing that, you grow the relationship or the connection between yourself and Krishna. And when you grow the connection, then your mind becomes focused and you gradually elevate yourself from what Krishna is saying from 12.10 to 12.9 to 12.8, where the optimal path is to mind. So Krishna has given all kind of options in making us empowered to be his devotees. And that empowerment is not as if you don't give your mind to Krishna, you're done. It's not like that. Krishna has ample steps in his armory to tell us that in order to come to me, these are the sequential steps you have to do. And if you end up doing the sequential steps for me, I'd be pleased and your work would be spiritualized. So we can go on and on, but I'd like to end here because I thought we have conveyed the message of this essence of this verse, which is to, if you can't focus your mind, do sadhana bhakti like most of the first initiates and second initiates in ISKCON end up doing. And then if you can't do that, then work for Krishna. And working for Krishna has significant benefits. And so please encourage all your friends, relatives to work for Krishna. And we gave, in summarizing, we gave the two examples of working for Krishna where Dukhi is transformed into Sukhi by just helping out in organizing the pot in a nice way. And then we gave the example of Ram Setu squirrel who was helping in little way and how he was recognized, even if he was not regulated. So with that, I'd like to end here. We can go on and on, but I thought the message is amply clear as we work in a very close connection in this Bhakti Vriksha. We talk about these little things which can just tune our lives, tweak our lives in such a way that we recognize a path to spiritualism, a path to Krishna consciousness. And once the path is established, we have done our job in sharing the message of Krishna properly without any adulteration, without any addition or subtraction, because Krishna's message has to be conveyed as is. And as Krishna is beautifully explaining the steps, we should take time to understand what Krishna and his greatest devotee, Srila Prabhupada, is saying in this purpose. So, like to end here. Any comments, questions? Let's begin. I'm sure you have many thoughts to this because it's just a powerful message which can be interpreted in a very positive way, in a way which empowers all of us to start working for Krishna. If we are not, I'm sure you all are, but still, if you can intensify that element of work for Krishna over a period of time, it is going to help us in the long run in generating that love we spoke about. More and more you work, more and more you study maths, you get to love maths and you can't stay without maths. The same with physics or whatever subject. So more and more you work on a certain area, it gives you that element of comfort, familiarity. And when you are familiar in an area, you start loving the subject. In this context, the subject and object of our thought process is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we're not talking about any mundane activity. We're talking about pristine activity where we're working for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanvat Pranamam, Guru Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Very, very beautifully explained, Prabhuji. Nicely explained. Just I'm trying to reiterate the same points, Prabhuji. So please forgive me if I have reiterated it. So while you are explaining, Prabhuji, what came to my mind, thoughts I'm just sharing here. If you see, Prabhuji, from the 12.8, 12.9, 12.10, if you see, Prabhuji, this is like a bottom-up approach, where Krishna is telling that, okay, if he's not asking us to start at the top, right? He's giving us a chance to do the bottom-up. If you can do from top, there is nothing like it, Prabhuji. We don't have to go to the bottom. But the bottom-up approach is that, okay, if you do, you can start by doing some service with Krishna in the center, right? That's what this 12.10 is telling us, that do something for work for Krishna. What is the work for Krishna means? Prabhupada always, I wanted to bring this point, Prabhuji. Prabhupada always tells that when we work for Krishna, two things, Prabhuji. One, the magnitude doesn't matter, as you have given the example of squirrel. The magnitude is not important. It is the consciousness which is getting transformed is the most important. And two, Prabhupada always tells that it brings spiritual communism. Basically, what the spiritual communism means, the I and the mind concept slowly fades away, Prabhuji. That means we are deviating from that I and mind because the whole this whole problem is because of the false ego of I and mind, Prabhuji. The whole material world is based is structured on that, as we have seen in the process of creation in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sarga and Visarga. It's the false ego, and the false ego in these earthly terms is I and mine, Prabhuji, right? So what happens, as you have given the example, Prabhuji, if we start sharing our time with for Krishna, or sharing Lakshmi with the Krishna, we try to gradually develop the spiritual communism. This is our temple, this is our world. Basically, finally, if you extrapolate it, it will basically say this is our world and this we are working for Krishna. So that is the main thing, Prabhuji. I want to tell that this bottom-up approach is, we are starting with where we can contribute something, right? We directly cannot meditate like Vishwamitra or someone, right? So that is at 12.8. We cannot directly do. So let's start by contributing something and build up. It's gradually builds up our devotion, love for Krishna, as the purport, and you have told Prabhuji, all this basically increases our love for Krishna, which is the ultimate aim for every living being. So that's the point, Prabhuji, I wanted to raise. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. You touched on one item where once you start working, which you added to the discussion, I think, is when you start working on it, you feel that this is part of your initiative or your project or your temple. When you end up doing that, then you feel part of the process, and you're thinking that you're not working on anyone else's idea or thought. So then you realize that it is a personal relationship between you and the Supreme. And when you have that personalization, Krishna consciousness is all about personalization. And nowadays, the entire mobile experience is all personalized. Everything is personalized. So likewise, once you start working for Krishna, you feel that this temple is mine. This Sunday feast is mine. I have to give the best experience to the devotee. So then once you personalize yourself, customize to your needs, you start working more and more. Instead of putting 1 hour a week, you put 2 hours a week, and then you start putting 3 hours a week. So your working for Krishna amplifies, and eventually it helps in your gradual increase of love for Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Any other thoughts? Niranjan Prabhu always comes up with nice questions all the time. Niranjan Prabhu, you have any reflections?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Yeah, all good, Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, Prabhuji, also I remember like in one of the verses from chapter 4, right? So when we walk for Krishna, there won't be any reaction basically, okay? Right? It's like sokarma, like akarma, right? There is one verse, right? So basically, if we do for our own sense gratification, then there will be a reaction to it, right? So we will be either, if you do good things, then that will be good reaction. If you do bad things, then will be bad reaction, right? So something if you do for Krishna, then there won't be any such reactions basically, right? Something I remember from the earlier verses.
Yes, yes. So nice. You connected it nicely. So there are 3 types of karma. One is karma, vikarma. Karma means good work, vikarma means bad work. But akarma is not like inaction, as it tends to explain. Akarma is A-class karma. A-class karma means you're basically neither you're working for yourself in a favorable way or an unfavorable way. You're basically working for a spiritual cause for which there is no reaction, in the sense that if you do good karma, you get some pious credits, you enjoy, even then you fall down once your pious credits are over. You do some bad karma because of the prarabdha karma, because you have done some bad karma, you get some punishment, and then you overcome it. So there is no up, so there is up and down in karma and vikarma. But in akarma, as you rightly said, as you are working for a spiritual cause, there is nothing like, you know, this business of up and down, up and down. So those things stays with you, and that's the reason why it's called absolute. So if you, even if you do +5, the absolute is 5. If you do -6, the absolute is 6. So absolute means whatever you end up doing, that goes directly to the kitty, and there is no reaction, and you do not have to face the prarabdha karma's reaction in this. That's a very, so whenever you work for Krishna, it benefits you in a subtle way, not in the way where all this accounting of karma is taking place, but in a way which is spiritual in nature, whose units are different, whose measuring units are so different, and that is something you definitely achieve. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhuji, today actually I went to this Swaminarayan temple near to my home. There is a temple. So also I see today like lot of ISKCON devotees also came there. I met some of the devotees today. And so Prabhuji, just wanted to know like, so this Swaminarayan is like incarnation of Krishna, because I met one of the people there. He was saying that he has all these 16 symbols they found in the foot of the. So he was telling the story of this. So just wanted to know, because I never try to explore more. So just wanted to know like any idea about like. Uh,
Yeah, so Prabhu, based on my knowledge is also limited. The Swaminarayan is actually a 17th century saint who was born in India, and he spread the process of the Swaminarayan worship around the western part of the world, and now that has been a hallmark of elegance, building big temples in various different places. And quite a lot of these saints, Prabhu, has mystic symbols in their body. So based on our teachings, based on our Guru Parampara, the scriptural reference of the arrival of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very well laid out in Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are recognized to follow Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So he was a saint, and he was a very bright saint, and he spread the method which many people who like to follow that method does. And that's a separate path. As you know, there are different paths to God, and I'm not here to comment on that path because I have not experienced that. But as we have been told to refer to Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, we have to be very focused in our ability to recognize the Gaudiya Parampara, which is one of the 4 bona fide paramparas. As we mentioned before, we have 4 bona fide paramparas, right? So Swaminarayan temple is a wonderful temple. It has very good elegance, and I have also gone there actually, but I really did not venture deep into their philosophy. But I definitely know that there is a saintly person in the 17th century in the western part of India who started it, and it didn't pick it up until very recently. And there are followers, and we are actually absolutely fine going there, paying obeisances, because they also have references to Krishna and references to Vishnu, and they also have a outline of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Robbinsville. So we definitely regard and respect their method of but our method is different. Our method is love for Krishna, because Krishna is a person, He's not. So we, as we know, in our altar, the main deities are the Krishna or the associates of Krishna. But in other temples, the layouts are different. The gurus are at a higher pedestal, but in our case, so there are differences. I'm not saying this is good or bad, but Srila Prabhupada has never instructed their disciples to have a big size deity of himself in the altar. He is seeing the altar from afar off, as you can see. He is not part of the altar. So our method is, we are always going to, Guru is a media to Krishna. Guru is not Krishna. He is a messenger who can take us towards Krishna, but he is not Krishna. And that has to be distinctly understood by all of us, that wherever you see that, I'm not saying it is followed in some faith, but wherever we see references to a guru being given higher prominence, either in the altar or in the teachings, most of the time, what Krishna has spoken in Bhagavad Gita is what we profess. And what Krishna's topics are talked about in Srimad Bhagavatam is something we profess. So our method is definitely distinct. And I'm sure their method, they have a lot of literature and they have a lot of followers. But we go back to the period of millions and millions of years ago when Vyasadeva wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's our Amala Purana, Bhagavata Amala Purana. So as long as there is recognition and appreciation for these powerful scriptures as the topmost agenda in the pursuit of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are fine with that. And there are some groups, for them, it's a different scriptures, which we tend to not believe because it has not come from the mouth of Krishna. And that is exactly where I just want to say, Prabhu, that we are different. And that's the reason why we have to be very focused in our ability to choose the path. And as I mentioned, there are many paths, but our path is very distinct, very personal, very sweet, full of love, and is very clear. Does that help, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Nicely explained. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? Trailokya Prabhu, how is everything? I hope you're doing wonderful. Any other comments before we finally close?
No, Prabhuji, yeah, it's all good, Prabhuji.
Thank you, thank you. So Bhakti Ratnakar Prabhu, should we end now?
Prabhuji, are you in India, Prabhuji, currently? Or?
Yes, I am in India. I'll be in India for 2 more weeks. Yes, I'm in India, Prabhu. We had some family challenges, so we are just trying to get over it. And on the 14th, I'm traveling back, and we'll have our class next Saturday, and next Saturday also, I'll be back in New Jersey. So yes, yeah, I'm now in India. Yeah. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Let's end here. Vancha kalpataruvesha kripa sindhu vayevacha patitanam pavanevyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granth Raj Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jagannath Prabhu ki jai.
Okay, Jai.